Have you ever noticed a pattern in your life? Something persistent, almost.
Hmm.
Well, mysterious. Maybe it's how you always seem to overcommit at work, or why you find yourself apologizing when, you haven't actually done anything wrong.
Or perhaps why you keep choosing partners who seem to need fixing.
Exactly. You think you're making these rational adult choices, right?
Right.
But often it turns out you're just running on some kind of, ancient code.
That's a great way to put it. Ancient code.
So today we're doing a deep dive, a real forensic look into that code itself. We're exploring this really powerful idea that the root of almost every adult pattern, our biggest successes or deepest anxieties, it all comes down to a single question, a question forged way back in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is this: what did I need to do in childhood to win the support and, crucially, the approval of my parents?
And it's really vital to grasp. We're not just talking about fuzzy memories here
Right.
or nostalgia. This is more like an operational audit. A look at your deepest emotional wiring. And maybe the most provocative idea here, perhaps even a bit uncomfortable, is that we might need to discard this myth of truly unconditional love within the family.
Ooh, okay. Unconditional love. A myth.
Well, the idea itself is beautiful, absolutely.
Right.
But in practice, in pretty much every family structure, there was always a kind of contract.
A contract.
Yeah, sometimes subtle, sometimes really obvious.
Uh-huh.
A requirement about what you had to do, what you had to be, and importantly, what things you absolutely had to skirt around, avoid to keep the peace,
Yeah.
to guarantee your emotional safety, essentially.
Yeah.
And that contract, that code we mentioned, it's probably still fully functional, driving your decisions today.
Okay. Let's unpack this then. Let's start by trying to identify those original laws of the house.
Good idea.
We need to sharpen the picture. The sources talk about using subsidiary inquiries. Think of them as like the bedrock principles of your adult self. So if you're listening, try this right now. Fill in these blanks. To please my father, I needed to. And to make sure I didn't upset my mother, I absolutely had to be. Or not be.
Those questions get right to the surface rules. What we could categorize as the explicit command.
Like explicit commands.
These are the tangible ones, the obvious laws of that particular household. Maybe it was, the absolute requirement to ace every single test.
Or be the family peacemaker, always smoothing things over.
Exactly, or be highly musical.
Yeah.
Or perhaps it was. Never, ever, under any circumstances, usurp the authority or the attention given to your older sibling, or maybe a younger one.
Right. There were clear mandates. You knew what was expected.
You did. But then, and this is where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit more insidious, we get to the disguise commands.
Disguised. How so?
Well, these weren't written down anywhere. They weren't usually yelled across the dinner table. They were absorbed, imbibed, you could say.
Like through the atmosphere.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It was the general sense, the unspoken fear maybe, that defines certain truths in your family.
Can you give an example? Like, what would that feel like?
Okay, maybe there was this pervasive feeling, never quite spoken, that financial struggle meant some kind of moral failure.
Ah.
So maybe your self-worth got completely tangled up with your future earning potential without anyone ever saying you must be rich.
Or perhaps the understanding that making noise, being disruptive, was somehow dangerous. So you learn to just exist as quietly as possible.
Yes, that's a classic one.
But how do we even start to unpack commands that were never actually spoken? It sounds so slippery.
We look at the echoes, the residual anxieties that show up now.
In adult life?
Absolutely. These commands are like these silent operating systems. They're still defining our adult fears, our self-judgment, often completely, regardless of our current status or what we've actually achieved.
So it wasn't lectures, it was observation.
Mostly observation, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the tight silence whenever money got mentioned,
Yeah.
or the sudden, maybe overwhelming attention you only got when you scored the winning goal.
Right, so you learned that's what gets valued.
Exactly. It's the belief that maybe your value lay almost entirely in your looks or your sporting ability, and everything else was just secondary. And what's really fascinating, where the complexity just deepens dramatically, is when we encounter what are called paradoxical commands.
Paradoxical, meaning contradictory.
Exactly. These are the truly maddening complexities, the ones that can keep people stuck, really stuck, well into their 40s, 50s, even 60s. Because the instructions they received were basically impossible to follow simultaneously. They canceled each other out.
Wait, that sounds agonizing. If you're given two opposing rules, you're literally set up for constant failure. There's no way to win.
Precisely. You're absolutely right. Think about a classic example. The parent who demanded, "You must be a massive winner, achieve great things, make us proud."
Okay, sounds familiar for some.
But the very moment you start achieving, maybe you get that big promotion or recognition, they become threatened.
Threatened.
Yeah. They might start criticizing the time you spend working, saying, "Oh, you're neglecting the family," or "Getting a bit too big for your boots now, aren't you?"
Wow. So you're being told to succeed and punished if you do.
You got it. You end up internally wired to both achieve and self-sabotage at the same time. Because winning, actual winning, means risking emotional rejection from the very people whose approval you were conditioned to seek. It's a terrible bind.
That is incredibly tough. Or what about that other example, the subtle instruction to try never to grow up, because maybe the caregiver is frightened by adult men or women.
Mm-hmm.
If you internalize that instruction, how does that play out in adult life? Are you just sort of stuck?
Often, yes. You might find yourself fearing commitment in relationships, maybe avoiding big life steps like buying a house, or you might even subtly sabotage career advances. Anything that requires you to step into true, unambiguous adult authority feels dangerous.
Because staying small feels safer?
It's the learned safety mechanism. And then there's arguably the cruelest paradox mentioned in the sources. The demand to essentially become extremely attached to me,
Right.
rely on me completely, made me your whole world,
Okay. So far, maybe intense, but
so that later I can break your heart or abandon you. This teaches a child, sometimes quite violently, that deep reliance, deep intimacy always leads to abandonment or betrayal.
God, that sets someone up for impossible intimacy issues later on. Terrified to trust.
Exactly. It makes healthy connection feel terrifying.
Okay, so if we zoom out from these really detailed personal psychological conditionings, how does this connect to the bigger picture? You mentioned countries earlier.
Right. So think about it. While our country of birth, whether we're French or Ghanaian or Korean or American, gives us an accent, maybe a legal system, a civil code,
Our passport?
yes. But we are always, first and foremost, citizens of those very specific, very localized micro-republics we call families.
Micro-republics. I like that. The Smiths, the Banerjees, the Niangs.
That's the really powerful metaphor here. That family unit, that's your original homeland, your first nation. And that tiny, often quite idiosyncratic territory, it defines profound things your actual national government never even touches.
Like what? What does this micro-republic define?
Well, it tells you what truly constitutes a respectable man or woman, according to its laws. It sets the baseline for how much self-esteem you're allowed to have.
It dictates what you have to do to be admired within that system.
Precisely. And crucially, it often sets the limits, the ceiling, on how much deep calm, how much fulfillment you're actually permitted to deserve in life.
Wow. So, okay, we've mapped the country we grew up in. We've looked at its laws, explicit and disguised, even the paradoxical ones. But here's the big so what question. Right? Why should someone who's, say, 45, financially independent, maybe living 1,000 miles away from their childhood home, why should they care about those old rules anymore? Why does auditing this matter now?
Because, and this is the core of it, this is what we call the tyranny of yesteryear.
The tyranny of yesteryear.
Yes. Because to a far, far greater extent than most of us realize, or maybe want to admit, those decades-old laws, they are still operating right now.
Running in the background.
Constantly. And very often, they are making absolutely no sense at all in your current reality. It's the residual behavior, the echoes, that give the game away.
Okay, give us some tangible examples. How does this residual behavior look today? In the workplace, maybe, or in relationships?
Okay, think about the high-achieving executive. Smart, capable, but they consistently refuse that next big promotion, or they downplay their successes.
Why would they do that?
Because, maybe unconsciously, they are still taking immense care not to succeed too much. They're afraid, deep down, of angering, say, a disappointed mother whose own high aspirations were maybe stifled decades ago.
So they think they're being humble or careful.
But actually, they're following an ancient script of familial loyalty that demands they stay slightly smaller than they could be.
Okay, that's one. What else?
Or, consider the employee who seems permanently on edge, always trying to appease the bad moods of men in positions of authority at work.
Yeah.
They internalize every slightly raised voice, every critical comment, as a major personal failure. It feels catastrophic to them.
And the link is?
It's often a residual reflex from childhood. Maybe their father had a violent temper that defined the whole atmosphere of the house, 40 years ago. And now they're reacting to their current boss as if he is that terrifying father figure.
That's incredibly specific and exhausting, I imagine. It's not just a memory, it's like a physical, behavioral reaction draining their adult energy.
Completely draining.
Or maybe you find yourself continuing to live expecting an attack, bracing for confrontation in every new relationship, maybe even sabotaging good things because you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly as you might have done when you were, say, 5 years old and in the hands of a highly damaged or unpredictable caregiver. You learned early on to be ready for the worst,
Because the worst felt normal then.
and that readiness becomes a default setting. And the emotional impact of this persistence, this tyranny, it's profound. We might discover, maybe to our real disquiet, that we are still applying this old set of edicts to our present lives. Edicts that long ago stopped aligning with any of our sincere adult hopes or dreams.
So we're still playing roles.
Absolutely. We continue to act the clown, maybe in serious professional settings, or we play the meek little girl in romantic relationships long after we become powerful women.
Or the terrified victim, always anticipating criticism. Or maybe daddy's favorite, still demanding that specific kind of attention.
Even when the original Republic of Home has long been disbanded, its government is gone, its elite figures may have resigned or passed away, its borders are effectively obliterated.
But you, the citizen.
You, the citizen, are still rigorously enforcing these expired mandates on yourself. It is utterly exhausting to live a life governed by ghosts.
A life where so much energy is spent appeasing people or dynamics that no longer hold real power, or maybe don't even exist in your immediate life anymore. Wow. So the crucial question then becomes, how do we stop this tyranny? How do we break free?
Well, this brings us right to the end point, to the two essential auditing questions you really need to ask yourself right now. Questions that build on everything we've discussed and hopefully offer a pathway forward.
Okay, what are they?
Question one is this: how much? How much energy, how much time, how much of my core identity am I still spending doing what I had to do back then in that original micro-republic?
Really calculate the costs.
Yes. Be honest about the cost in your current life. And then, question two, how much do I actually like or maybe dislike these laws of yesteryear? When I look at them clearly, as an adult.
Do they serve me now?
Exactly. Are these rules truly serving the adult you are today, the life you genuinely want to build? Or are they actively, maybe subtly, destroying it?
So the first step is clarity. Taking a really clear, maybe unromantic look at this highly distinctive mini-country we all come from. Acknowledging its powerful defining legacy.
Acknowledging it fully, without blame necessarily, but with clarity.
And then, once we have that clarity,
Then we have to face the potential for making the ultimate, perhaps most liberating choice.
which is,
In certain cases, maybe many cases, before we waste yet more precious time living in servitude to an expired regime, to these old laws, we might need to take the hardest step.
go on.
We might need to declare our independence. We might need to, metaphorically speaking, emigrate.